You were saying that the foreign policy decision making in Bangladesh, how it has been more historically driven and how it has been influenced by history.
Well, I've mentioned a number of ways that decisions on foreign policy have been taken. One is it's been initially driven by historical considerations and factors, and certain governments, as indeed the present government, certainly in its policy towards India, has been influenced by the role India played in 1971.
If we, sorry to cut you, if we are to put a framework about the decision-making process in Bangladesh, how would you do that?
On foreign policy?
On foreign policy, yes.
Well, as I said, there's no systematic decision-making process. The way the system works is, on occasions, the Prime Minister decides. On some occasions, recommendations come from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On most occasions, developments take place which require the government to take a position which has foreign policy implications. And there an assortment of actors could be involved, including different ministries. So as I said, there's no clearly delineated framework in terms of both formulating foreign policy and indeed the implementation of foreign policy.
From your point of view, what lessons have we learned from our colonial leaders, like rulers actually, how we have moved forward from their own words, say from 1971 or even from 1947?
Well, I would say, as far as I'm aware, we've learned no lessons of any kind. We've pretty much developed a fairly haphazard, I would even use the word chaotic system of our own, which in my view is certainly not the best way to formulate policy. So I would have suggested a number of using a number of instruments, mechanisms, starting from cabinet to a more structured and streamlined use of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the establishment of certain ad hoc advisory groups on specific subjects, and the better and more effective use of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs. But my sense, and I repeat what I've said earlier, that this is now how it happens in Bangladesh. It is personality driven. Different people in key positions take a different view and approach to both the formulation of foreign policy and foreign policy initiatives. We were to a large extent also influenced, as I said, by historical developments. The War of Independence of '71 did have a major impact in the early years on our foreign policy. The changes that took place after August '75 did have an impact on our foreign policy. And now we have different, if you like, political protagonists in the body politic of the country that have certain, if you like, biases or preferences in terms of their foreign policy orientation. So you may, for example, in the case of, as we did in the case of the BNP Jamaat government, have greater leaning towards Pakistan, towards the OIC countries, Arab countries, notably Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. In the case of the present government, there is clearly a desire and a visible shift in terms of its policy towards India, a desire to improve relations significantly with India on a wide range of issues. What can our relations with the US and Europe have generally been good and cordial. I'd add to that, Western countries in general, or the OECD in general, which would also include Canada and Australia and Japan. Initially, it was a relationship driven by aid and economic assistance to Bangladesh, which gave them a certain leverage and influence within the country. I would say in recent years, the fact that our principal export is ready-made garments, which and that Europe and the US are our two largest markets, that has become an important driving factor, which in turn still gives the countries leverage on issues such as Bangladesh's respect for human rights, respect for democracy and democratic governance, which still, so there's been a kind of a back and forth in the relationship, driven by our priorities as against their priorities.
Okay. I'm almost at the end of my 10 minutes, but the thing is that when you are dealing with, as a think tank, when you are researching and you are looking into the government's policies, what significant characteristics do you find dealing with current policies or the policies that you have researched? The same as what you have said. Right. So do you think that the way we are dealing with it, there have been saying that the post-colonial states tend to be more democratic, and there are sayings again against it, saying that they come to a stalemate. So do you think which part is more true for the case of Bangladesh, according to you?
No, I think in Bangladesh we have gone through a fairly turbulent period in our own political history. Mm-hmm. We've had what I would refer to from 75 to 1990, which is 15 years of military and quasi-military rule, followed by 20 or now almost 21 years of parliamentary democracy, with in between periods of caretaker governments. I think it's a fair comment to say that whilst we've been successful in holding free and fair elections, resulting in the appointment of elected governments, the parliamentary democracy as such has been largely non-functional in Bangladesh. So we've developed democracy with Bangladeshi characteristics. Okay. So We have a highly centralized system of government where all authority rests in the Prime Minister and to some extent the Prime Minister's office.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Subban. I've just reached my 10 minutes.